Andrew Haug here for Heavy at Home, and we are now chatting with Mr. Tim Charles from OBLIVISCARIS, who of course are halfway through their massive Asian tour, hitting all these countries that a lot of Australian bands don't really even get to play, and of course this band has done that so far. So let's chat with Tim now and find out exactly how the tour has been going and everything else that's happening on the tour with OBLIVISCARIS. G'day Tim, how you doing?
Very good, Andrew. Thanks very much for having me on the show tonight.
No worries, and of course you've got a bit of a night off in the great Hong Kong because obviously you've covered Japan and China. But let's just get to the top again for the whole tour and talk a bit about the first reactions when you played for the very first time in Japan.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess it's been a pretty incredible experience. You know, we've been on the road for a week now, sort of halfway through this tour, and when we landed in Japan, we really had no idea what to expect. You know, we'd never played outside of Australia, and you know, when we booked this tour, we didn't really even know how many fans we had in these countries, but we sort of approached it from the perspective of thinking, hey, let's get out there and play to these countries and see if we can get our foot in the door in these scenes. And you know, Asia is a lot closer than Europe and North America, and you know, we sort of thought that it would be a wonderful thing if we could get a big profile in these countries because they are relatively, you know, close to Australia. But yeah, but we really, you know, didn't know what to expect. So when we arrived, you know, we had been talking about, you know, trying to keep expectations low, and you know, we turned up to the venue in Nagoya on the first day of the tour. And we had, you know, a few fans waiting out the front, waiting for autographs at 3 in the afternoon, you know, 5 hours before the show was going to start. And so that was sort of an encouraging sign. And that first show in Nagoya was pretty special because we were just playing like a small little club, but it was, you know, packed, and you know, you could tell that a lot of people owned the album and they were really passionate about the music. And I guess that sort of blew us away because we had sort of thought, well, you know, just a little show to start off the tour, and then it went really well. And we were very lucky. We had been touring in Japan with a Japanese metal band called DSD, and you know, they picked us up from the airport and drove us around. And even that was a bit of an adventure in itself because the guys from DSD, one of them's a carpenter, and they had both had like minivans, and they had converted the back half so that they'd put like sort of so that you could put luggage underneath all throughout the back half of the van, and they had like wooden planks over it with mattresses. So the back half, you would put all your gear in underneath, and they'd put these wooden planks over the top and a mattress over the top as well, and then say, hey guys, go sit up there. So we were traveling around Japan, basically, you know, sitting on the back of a mattress in these minivans, which was a little bit different to how we travel in Australia. But yeah, it all went really well. And you know, from Nagoya we headed on to Tokyo, and that show was just incredible. I mean, that's probably one of our favorite shows of all time now, because the show sold out and was just absolutely jam-packed. And I think we spent, you know, more than an hour after the show signing autographs and posing with photos, and the Japanese fans are just crazy. So it was quite an experience to behold, just very different to Australia.
Well, tell us a bit about China as well. Of course, you've just wrapped up 3 shows there too, and again, like I said, there's not a lot of bands that have actually played over there. I know that Adelaide's Truth Corroded have actually toured in China, but there really aren't a lot of other Australian heavy acts that have sort of hit that region, but a lot more bands are starting to go there, so it's great that the Chinese metalers get a chance to finally see some bands. And again, it just shows just how amazing the internet has been towards heavy music, because more people can find out about you know, bands like yourself. So fill us in on your first experience in China, and of course the shows and the fans.
Yeah, I guess with China, I mean, like I said before, we didn't have that high expectations with Japan, and that really, you know, blew us away. The response we got there. For China, the expectations were even less because in China, Facebook is banned, so we can't really communicate very well with our Chinese fans, and so you know, it's a bit harder to gauge, you know, how many people that you are there that are already into the music and all that sort of stuff. So, but it sort of made sense for us, you know, because we're traveling, you know, from Japan, you know, and China is next door, and we sort of went from the north and south through China and down into Hong Kong, and we'll keep going through Southeast Asia. So China was sort of on the way to Hong Kong, and I had actually heard stories from the guys in Truth Corroded, who were friends of ours, and they had spoken really positively of their experience in China, so we thought we would give it a go. But honestly, when we arrived in Wuhan, it was a bit of a culture shock, because that city is just is absolutely insane. In comparison to Japan, Japan is just so ordered, and everyone is so incredibly polite, and it's just way more so than in Australia. And then when we got to Wuhan in China, the roads there are just absolute chaos, and no one really pays attention to the street signs or red lights or lanes and anything like that. And really nobody speaks English. And we were in Wuhan for about a day and a half, and we did not run into one other white person the whole time we were there, except there was one or two at our show. And so when we first arrived, it was like arriving in an alternate universe. There was just nothing in common with a country like Australia. But the show itself, though, when we played there, was fantastic, and we had about 150 people turn out, which we were absolutely thrilled with. And from there, all of the cities in China were really very different. After Wuhan, we got the bullet train down to Guangzhou, and that was probably more what I was expecting China to be like, in that it was still quite old, and a lot of the houses and apartments were quite run down, but there was trees everywhere, and parts of it were quite beautiful in amongst the fact that it was still quite poor. That show was probably even better, funnily enough. We just had a really fantastic response from the crowd, and we were actually playing quite a big venue there. And when we first turned up at soundcheck, we were a bit worried that maybe it might be a bit too big for us. But thankfully, we got a lot of people turning up, and everyone was really enthusiastic and had a great time. And then just last night we played in Shenzhen, and that was again just very different. Very modern, affluent city, really. Not really that dissimilar to Hong Kong, where we've just arrived today. And so I think just going through those three cities in China, all three of the shows, we had really great turnouts, and the Chinese fans were really passionate, and quite a few of them obviously weren't just there just to check us out, but they already had a copy of the album. And I guess, like you were saying, that's one of the wonderful things about the internet now. I'm not sure how easy our album is to get in stores in China, but I guess that is one of the bonuses of all the file sharing and downloading that does happen these days, that when you have a country like that where we've never been, and the CD isn't really available in stores, that people still somehow find out about it, and the word of mouth spreads, and somehow we got some really great crowds heading along. So yeah, it's been very exciting.
Now, as I mentioned, you are in Hong Kong currently, and you've got a show in the next 2 days, and then on to Taiwan and then Thailand. So do you have much of an expectation towards the rest of these countries coming up? Have you been to any of these countries before as a tourist?
No, I haven't been to, as a tourist, I haven't been to any of these countries at all. So I guess that's been one of the really wonderful things about this tour, because we arrived in Japan a day early, which was great because it meant that we just got to walk around and see a little bit of Nagoya, and you don't get to see necessarily a lot of these cities when you're playing shows. I got to see a bit of Nagoya because we arrived a day early, but Tokyo, I only really saw the drive through Tokyo and anything within 2 blocks of the venue, because we sort of arrived there in the afternoon and had sound check and ate dinner and played the show, and then the very next morning we flew off to China. But we've got to see little bits and pieces here and there, and which has been wonderful. And we've got actually two days off here in Hong Kong, which is really exciting. We got the show on Wednesday night, and we're expecting that to be hopefully one of the biggest shows of the tour. And then on to Taiwan and Thailand, and I guess just trying to lap up every ounce of the experience of each culture and each country. And we've been trying to make sure we set aside as much time as we can just to talk to people at the shows and talk to all the fans. And we've been spending probably half an hour after every show just doing autographs and posing for photos and all this sort of stuff that we never really get asked to do in Australia, but over here everyone's just been crazy for it. And I guess just getting that chance to talk to the locals and get to understand each of these countries and cities a bit more has been a really wonderful part of the tour. And I guess looking forward to the time in Hong Kong, because we literally only just got here a couple hours ago, and then the couple countries left in Taiwan and Thailand.
Now, quickly tell us a bit about the plans of the band once you get back to Australia, and do you find that, coming back to Australia will be a little bit of a reality check, considering, like you mentioned, about the enthusiasm of a lot of these fans that you've played to? Do you think that the Australian audiences could possibly take a leaf out of their book?
I guess yes and no. I mean, the fans are very different. I mean, like in Australia, I mean, we've got fantastic fans in Australia, and we get such great support. And we had a couple of headline shows in July in Melbourne and Sydney, and we had huge crowds turn out, and everyone seemed to love the shows. And for the first time, actually, in July, we had to do an encore, in Australia, which was great. And but it is different, I guess. I think it's also like in Australia, we play every few months, and whereas here, like you go to Japan and you might have had, like, we had people in Japan that traveled. It's about a 5-hour drive between Nagoya and Tokyo, and we had people that drove the 5 hours so they could see it at both shows. And China is such a huge country, and we had people fly from Beijing, which is the other side of the country, essentially, down to Shenzhen last night to see us, and all those sorts of things where the excitement level of the fans, because they've never seen you before and they might have been listening to your music for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, it's just hard to match that when you might be playing in your local city where most of the crowd might have seen you play sometime earlier that year. But we appreciate, I guess, all the different types of fans, but it's definitely been, I guess, an eye-opener just to see, what all these countries are like, and I guess also, a glimpse into the future of, hopefully what, the band's career is going to be like, because this is a headline tour for us, and, we sort of put ourselves out there, and, if people turn up or don't turn up, it's sort of on us as opposed to, going as a tour support for a bigger band. And just the fact that the tour has been so successful so far, I guess, has really given us a lot of confidence that when the new album comes out next year, we can, go across to Europe and North America, and then hopefully come back to Asia and, really try to do this as much as we can. And I guess given us a lot of belief that we can do that, and we can eventually draw the sort of crowds that we do in Australia across the world. If we are prepared to dedicate the time to do that. And I guess as for what we do when we get back to Australia, we get back on September 3rd, and then that weekend, we jump straight back into it. We're playing Hell on the Bay in Melbourne, which we're co-headlining with Psychroptic, which is really exciting because, I mean, how often you get to play a boat cruise? And then after that, it's pretty much pre-production for the new album. We've got some support slots playing with Enslaved in Melbourne and Brisbane in November, and Serenia in Melbourne and Sydney in December. And then recording the new album in November, December, and on from there. So I guess looking forward to getting that new album out so that we can keep moving forward and do all of this again in another part of the world. Oh,
good stuff. And again, congratulations to you and the lads, of course, taking your music to other dimensions. We can get you to choose your favourite track from the latest OBLIVISCARIS record, The Portal of I, to conclude our chat, Tim.
It's a little bit like trying to choose between your kids, but how about let's have a listen to of Petrichor Weaves Black Noise.
No worries. We're chatting with Tim Charles here from OBLIVISCARIS, currently touring Asia and bound in Hong Kong, ready to, hit the town. So let's hear some of his music right now. Thanks again, Tim. This is OBLIVISCARIS.